We're now on full automatic in the hands of the computers.
It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
And here we get to the nerve-wracking fiddly bit part of the window frames. Have got pieces glued together. I have been slowly wearing these down and thinning them, and what it's going to take is to fix a particular point with a dab of CA, and then go up to the other corner and dab that, and then kind of bend this into position as I'm gluing. There's no real other way to simulate that shape but to put it in place. And this one was a little easier. I could actually make up that back corner before I put it in place. And then these will be painted green, and hopefully will blend in with everything else, and they won't be as noticeable. But I need something to take care of that top edge of the clear plastic as it relates to the top edge of the resin kit. And I didn't want to try to just put some putty or some I didn't want to just try to put some putty or some Bondo in there, because I know it would monkey up the glass a bit. So that's what these frames are for. Well, that probably went better than I had a right to expect. The frames are in, yay! I'm gonna I got a little bit of putty, a little bit of Bondo here. I'm going to do a little bit of Bondoing there, and once I paint the frames, the cockpit green, I think they will blend in quite nicely. And then I need to mask them off and touch this with that gloss white again. And then I'll be ready for the final construction, which is the small rockets on the wings and the decals. And I'll put another coat of gold on this now. Working on the windows on the Colonial One kit. These windows are tiny. They're way small. And I, for the purposes of this build, have not hollowed them out. I'm not planning on lighting this kit. So what I've done basically is to spray over the areas where the windows are. And we're going to do these masks as actual window masks. What I've done here, like I said, is I've sprayed and let it dry, and those are the windows. Now, I've taken the wee bits of vinyl that you see here and placed them, this is the other side, where the areas are the windows that I want to keep black, and I will spray the layer of light gray / white over top of these windows. And then when I peel them up, not only will they be nicely recessed, because I'm covering a smudge there, nicely recessed because of the extra layer of paint, but they will still be black. And I thought it was a cleaner, easier way than to try to paint them in black after we're done. Same holds true for these front bow windows here on the secondary hull, or actually on the primary hull. Those windows there I want to keep black. So if you see what I do on the other side, you can guess already. Let me focus these. And cut tiny little rounded squares. Now that's the important thing. These windows are not corners are not sharp. They are rounded. So the if you look in there, you'll see that focus. You'll see that those windows are actually rounded. Now that's the primary windows. Up on the secondary hull here, you've got, around up in the upper part here, you've got an interesting issue, because there's what I call a double indent. There's an indent of a window and then an indent of a window frame. Toothpick is where here? Pointing out. Inner window frame. So that's going to call for a two-stage painting. We're going to block I've sprayed black on those windows. We're going to block those off. Then I'm going to spray over them with a medium gray, which will be the color of the window sills. And then I'm going to block that off before I spray the overall white on the top. And here's what the tiniest windows look like, all masked off. Now, I know that when I plot the shape, it is a pointer. There it is. I know that this shape is consistent. It is the same shape because it is basically the same shape duplicated many times when I go to plot it. But it kind of shows off that on the tooling or on the sculpt of the ship, I'm imagining it was taken from a 3D render, that all of the windows are not precisely the same size. So what this is actually going to do is help unify the sizes of some of these. So we've got that going for it, which is nice. It's a little bit, this one here is a little bit crooked. So now I will spray a gray over top of that, which will kind of lock these smaller pieces in, and then I will cover the entire area, well, the entire area outside of this ledge here. I'll cover this square with another layer of masking. And then we will spray the blue actually that goes on here. There is white on this side and blue on this side, and then there's a gold band that runs down. So that's all of the stuff that I plan on making painting masks for, but we're going to start with these, getting these windows blocked out. Greetings, it's Saturday morning. It's time to button up the, and I keep saying that, I'm sorry. It's time to finish up the Icarus. I'm going to brush on a coat of paint around the window frames, and then it'll be a matter of touching up this white and the gold and the gray and everything else, and then hopefully we will get to the finish line this weekend. Okay, the frames are painted. Don't mind this bit of ugliness up here. I'm going to touch that back up. What I did was patch a little bit of the sanded area and the Bondo putty area with some white Tamiya just as an undercoat. Then I will wet sand that flat and use some of this white finish. I'm going to decant some of that and put it in airbrush so that I can do this fine touchy work with the same paint that I used on the rest of the hull. And I've also retouched the nose where I sanded some rough spots, so that's drying. You know, I've always envied those modelers who can keep a clean workspace while they're working. I call them gentlemen modelers. They seem to have just the tools out they need for just the project that they're using, and they miraculously have just the brush they need for every application. I am not like that. I don't feel right unless I've got at least 4 things going on, and there is a whirlwind of chaos happening on my desk that I can somehow wrest order out of. But enough philosophy. Let's get back to the Colonial One. I have got all the wee tiny windows masked, and those are primarily the ones here on the spine. I'm going to spray gray over them now, so I can actually spray gray in these recesses to hit the second layer of indent. I'm not going to spray over any of these because they simply get the white sprayed over them, the white of the ship, and actually this gets blue sprayed over it. So first I'll put the gray on, then I'll put the second level of masking on, then I'll do the white. Well, I decided to put the gray over all of the top only because 2 reasons. I had gray left over in the brush after I sprayed those windowsills, and secondly, the more I thought about it, the more I thought that, hey, you know, if I spray gray over that outward, the black splash, you know, the oversized black splash, it's going to be easier for the white to cover it and it won't be as noticeable. I did blow off a couple 3 windows, which is why I'm glad I include plenty of extras to replace those. But that'll give you an idea how the windows are going to look, if that helps anything. Looks pretty good. I'll just replace those. Okay, it is later Saturday evening. I had to take off some serious time this afternoon to turn that light up a little bit. I take off some serious time away from the modeling this afternoon to do some yard work. It was getting to the point where I was getting the stink eye from my neighbors, and I can hear them silently judging me every time I enter or leave the house. So I really had to get out there and do something just to show that I had intentions of doing yard work. I didn't do all of it. I'll spread out some for tomorrow, but that took some time away from the modeling, and of course it exhausts me because it's the first cut of the year, and that is, you know, you're pushing through all the crap you didn't get up last year, so it takes a little bit more out of you than normal. But let's get back to where we are. I had been putting coats of the white back on the Icarus and wet sanding in between them, and of course that meant covering up this part that's supposed to be green again, so I need to re-green that. But the white finish is good, and the thing about this white finish is this is it. I mean, this is the gloss finish. I'm not going to have to worry about glossing over it to put decals down, so this will be the finish that gets the decals. So a little bit of touch up of color here. I'm going to let this white set up overnight, and then tomorrow I'm going to put the color back here and here, and back in the gray back in here. And I think if I pull off this bit of tape, you'll see that the nose has been painted gold and is nicely protected in its golden state. So that's good. Take some of this tape off. Yeah, you go. Yeah, see, that's nice and gold. So all I need, and I've got the smaller rockets on the wings and up here. So those are done. I have to touch the paint on those since I got a little bit of white paint on those. But we're almost done, and tomorrow I hopefully will get the decals on, and then it'll just be a matter of letting the decals set. I may gloss over the whole thing after the decals have had a day to dry before I ship this back to young Nestor, who gets it, and it'll be done. But also, I'm ready for the next stage on the Colonial One, which is what I'm going to grab up the camera and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here you can see we have, and I'm going to try to do this with a pointy object, we have masks over the black windows. Trust me, there are black windows behind there. And I have sprayed gray over top of all of this. So the next step is to take more masks. You can see here the 2 masks that got blown off in the airbrush, so I've replaced those. And I have masks that I have cut to the size of this whole, that's it, where, find it, this whole recessed area is going to be masked. And then once those are done, I'm going to start spraying white over the whole thing. And you'll trust me, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about as soon as I get off the camera and start doing it. And here, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. This is the side that I've not finished yet, but you can see the orange mask trapped underneath here. And here's the side I have finished. Now, what we have under here is we have a orange mask covering that whole indent, but we still have the 2 smaller masks that are covering the black paint. So when we paint white paint over all this, the area that is masked will stay gray. So you'll get white, then gray, then black. That is the plan. We'll see how it works. It's tough to see, I can tell by looking at that's probably closer to the original gray, and this is the very light gray. It's not quite 100% white. It's a very light gray on top of it, on top of all those windows, and this is where it's going to sit for the rest of the evening. I will pick this up again tomorrow. Also, while I'm here and have the gray paint out, I put another coat on the back panel for the Icarus. Look at that new handle. How about that? How about that noise? Much better than the one I had on there before. Just need to blacken the inside of those bell thrusters and put a little bit of scorching around the outside, and this back plate will be done. You can see the gold nose on the Icarus and the gray down here at the bottom. And I'll work on that green tomorrow. One last bit of painting on a Saturday evening before we close up, and that is to take care of the blue stripes on the side of the Colonial One. And really what it is as simple as masking off the area that I want to keep white, and then I will put some tape over this so I don't spill any paint up there. But pressing this down around its edge to get a nice sharp line, and putting a bit of blue paint on it. It ain't rocket science, but it is starship science. It took a few seconds, and now we have some lovely blue on the top part of the Colonial One. And the nice thing about it is it's a nice easy shape. It's not like the complicated shape that has to go on the sides of this. So we'll put this aside. It's a special case. We'll deal with that a little bit later. But this will show the technique, and like I say, underneath all of those window masks is a black window. It's a black window, baby. Okay, I had a bit of an accident taking off the yellow tape, but it's a happy accident because I could show you how everything turned out a little quicker than I wanted to. You can see here when I pulled the tape off, I actually pulled off some of the outer masks, and you can see how well that gray is retained inside those divots. And even here it went 2 layers deep and pulled off a window mask, but you can really see once I focus it back in that was the intended goal. You have a gray inset with a black window inside it. Now I'm going to replace those masks with some more masks because I'm not quite done painting here, and I want to keep those windows clean. But again, you can see that's the idea right there. Okay, now you can see how the blue line looks nice and crisp and clean with the mask taken off of it. And now I can go in and weather some panels and put some fading and some smoke on there. I really haven't decided yet how new or used I want this ship to be. It was never, well, let's see, it was designated Colonial One after the attack on the colonies. It wasn't anything more than just a transport before then, so it wasn't like it was kept pristine or cleaned up or anything special before then. So it doesn't need to be showroom beautiful, but it doesn't need to be as ragtag as the rest of the fleet, if that makes any sense. So it'll allow me to weather across here and put some shading on now that I've got the blue line painted on. I always, when I paint models that have weathering, I always try to paint them as if they were showroom new and then weather them after that. Trying to figure out what's the best look for them. But now I'm going to replace those masks. Greetings, it's Sunday morning. Excuse the rough voice. Wow. I was mowing grass yesterday and must have got a snoot full of pollen. But we are, for the last time, I swear to you, my left hand lifted to the Lord, I'm going to paint this green again for the last time. And while that's drying, I will start planning out the decals. Like I said, I don't have to worry about glossing this before I put the decals on because I have a glossy surface. So I gotta put one last bit of masking over the glass there, and then we'll be ready to spray paint some green. Masking removed, and the windows are now re-greened. You may see some specks in the windows. I've got some dust that I have to clean up before I turn this model over, but look at that. I think we're ready for some decals. One other thing, while the decals are drying, I'm going to touch the paint on those engine bells. I have to resilver them a bit. They got a little bit of the white overspray from yesterday, and I need to do some final painting on this back. But we are, and I keep saying this, but we are perilously close to finishing. A little bit of red, white, and blue on here, and we'll be done. Be ready to mail it off. And we're back. It's Sunday afternoon. I've got a bunch of stuff to get done today and precious little time to get it done. So it got me thinking about time and how we deal with it. And without boring you with the long Doctor Who time is linear progression, timey-wimey bit explanation, I'll simply say that I view time like a Tetris block, if you will, coming at you in 3/4 dimension like the opening credits of Star Wars. Jobs come at you, and it's your duty to try to fit them in as you can. Sometimes it's a long skinny block that you can kind of push over to the side. Sometimes it's an L-shaped block, and you can start on something and pick it up at a later point, set it aside while something dries, and work on something else. And sometimes it's one of those big square massive blocks that you know is going to eat up a whole chunk of time, and you can't do anything but that. And I've got one of those jobs today because I have got to get the front yard mowed. I have neighbors. I have my own sense of pride having my yard looking good. So what I'm going to do is work on the Icarus. I'm almost done with it. I'm going to do some fun flashy stuff now in putting the decals on. And that is something that I can put the decals on and let dry while I'm doing something else, which is one of those L-shaped blocks. And so what I want to do first is get these decals on. And like I said, while that's drying, I can tackle the yard and or something else. So let's get to it. This is the fun, colorful stuff. So let's see what we got. Okay, here is the Icarus with the decals already separated out. Now, for some reason, there is a whole lot more of top stripe than I will ever need. And then there's back stripe. And United, which for some reason, I don't know why they chose that font, but is clearly the wrong font. But what can you do? And then we've got the little flags, which go on the these little wings up front. So what I'm going to do is all of this stuff first, and the back, and then I'll be able to stand it up and do the big stripe along the belly. I'm going to take this piece off here so that this will stand. I can do all of the stuff that happens up in the nose area, get that all done, and then concentrate on this. So first thing I need to do is to clean off my area so that I've only got the products out that I need and make it a lot less distracting. Now you'll notice the first thing I did on one of this, on the nose stripe, is I cut a little bit off of each side because I know that they are way too long just from fitting it over top there. But B, more importantly, I wanted to stick this into some water, one of the scrap pieces. Just put it in some water and pull it out and use it as a guide to tell me how tough these decals are going to be. Are they so old that they're going to crack? Do I need to, be extra special careful with them? Any of that kind of stuff. And here's the nice little scrap of decal to work with. Well, the good news is the decals are strong enough to withstand a little bit of repositioning. The bad news is although there's a bit of arc kind of baked into the design, it needed to be a little bit more archy than it was. The curve was a little flat because I did have to end up slicing it in a couple different places to get it to lay flat and to follow the line that it needs to follow. So now I'm going to do the bottom part of that, and then I'll lay on the 4 flags. And all of the flags are down. Nothing too controversial here about the placement of them. They are stars in, which means the blue field of stars should be on the inside of the ship. And they should be parallel to that leading edge there, not to the outside edge. I've seen some people who put the flags on so that they are parallel to this when they need to be parallel to that. So, like I said, nothing controversial there. The next one I want to put on is the United States. It goes down the center here. Now, the placement of this up and down relative to where it should start is tricky. And like I said, this font that they've chosen is not right. And the spacing of the lettering is not right. But rather than trying to cut all of that lettering apart and respace it, which would be nuts, I'm just going to settle on a placement. I've seen people put it all the way up here. I've got a reference I'd like to show you on the computer screen. And that is from beneath, but it is still the same lifting body. And you can see that the U clearly is at the opening, or is above the hatch, but the N is not. So that is where I'm going to take my cue from, is putting the U just above where the hatch is. And back over to the desk here. That would mean that the U is going to be right above that indent where the hatch is. And here you go. All the decals for the top part are in place. And now it's time to put the big stripe on, which goes right about there. And that's going to be a bit of a trick, because imagining a level line here is, without marking anything, is going to be the tough thing. I have seen in the reference pictures that I trust. I mean, I've seen plenty of reference pictures of other builds, but when all possible, I go back to film screen captures. And it looks like that second line, or the main line, is just that far back from the corner of the window. And it goes straight across, and then it goes out to both wings. And I say that because in the scenes where it's bobbling up and down in the water, only this much of the ship is really seen, and you can see that stripe. So I'm using that as my reference gauge for how far down this stripe needs to go. I've seen people put it way down here. It may look good, but it's not right. It needs to be right about there. And what I'm going to do is cut this long. Again, some of this arc is baked in, but I don't think it's enough. I'm going to cut it to where the arc wants to be, and then I'm going to cut the outside segments off to run straight on the straight part of the wing. Rather than trying to make that all one decal, I'm going to try to make this all one decal and then run the smaller segments out to the corners. I think it's going to make it easier in the long run to line up the top and bottom stripes. Okay, I won't tell you that I didn't hold my breath for a few minutes while I was putting some of this stuff down, but that is all of the top decal work. I've got to wrap that decal around the bottom side, but then we're done with the decals. And then I can go do that other thing that's going to require a big block of time, mowing the front yard, and come back. And when I come back, all these decals should be nicely dried in, and I can do the final paint touches, like on these little engine bells. I need to touch the silver on those. I need to spray the black inside those, and the black scorching on the outside of that. But man, oh man, we're close. We are close. I think the report next week will show the final version before I packed it up. And here are the final decals in place. Almost would have to think that I don't deserve to have them come out as good as they did, but you know what? I do. And they did. The they lined up, and I will say, if this is this is the point where I normally say, if you did your math right, all of the decals should line up. But given the odd symmetries and shapes of this kit, it's a wonder they matched up at all. But they seem to have done, and this is the beauty side, so as long as it looks good there and I can justify the rest, that's a happy day. So I spent a good hour putting these decals down. Nothing more tedious and nerve-wracking than trying to put straight lines over curved surfaces. So now I let this sit for a good 2-3 hours before I come back to it. This may be all we get done this weekend on this. I still have this back panel that I can work on independently. So I may just set this aside to dry for the rest of the weekend. Well, we come to the end of another weekend. Of course, I had some more stuff to show you that fell through at the last minute, so crap on that. You know, the best laid plans of mice, men, and small Italians are always subject to the whims of nature. But did get the majority of the Icarus done this week. Like I said, I normally have to spend some time on Sunday afternoon getting this chopped together and uploaded, and I will continue a little more work past the time that I will stop recording. But she's largely done. Tiny bit of touching up, just fragmentally touching up, especially on those engine bells, but decals are all on. They are set up. They are dried in. Everything is lovely. I did not get the engine bells blackened today like I was hoping to, at least not in time for this video, so that'll happen next time. More importantly, if you live anywhere in my neighborhood, I got my grass cut, yes. So that is a thing that's done. And I can get back to the more important jobs at hand. See, I was working on something else and I rushed it and it screwed it up, and therefore I got nothing to show on my special project. So we'll save that for next time. Oh, and the Colonial One is very nicely coming along. I've got the blue on the top. Well, let me go get it. Hold the phone. You can see where we are with the Colonial One. We've got the blue on there. We've got, of course, this is all just held together. It's not glued together yet. But I did not do any aging on the top like I was going to, like I was wanting to do. Let's see if we can do something here with this light. No, that just makes it worse. But you can see here, it's coming along. And that'll be a big part of the next report will be the continued work on the Colonial One. So enough rambling. Let's get this cut together, and until next week, go out and build a model. Bye.